This is Hair for Radio with Jamie Stangroom. I am Jamie Stangroom, and my guest for this episode is the only actor who's appeared in all 9 Star Wars saga films, plus the spin-off movies Solo and Rogue One. Is the man behind or inside everybody's favourite Gold Protocol droid, C-3PO himself, Anthony Daniels. Subjects include his struggle to be accepted in that galaxy far, far away, life without the late Carrie Fisher, and why Star Wars fandom is a bit like Brexit. Talking together in London before the release of Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, it went something like this. Anthony Daniels.
Yes.
Greetings.
Thank you.
So we are here to talk about your new book, I Am C-3PO, the inside story by you, Anthony Daniels. And let me tell you, it is a book that I've not stopped reading.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, mostly because I'm lonely and have no friends.
Right.
And it was there for me.
Yeah.
However, actually, I have to genuinely say it is a great read. And I am a Star Wars fan, but I feel like it's a book that could appeal to Star Wars fans of all the relevant generations, but also casual and hardcore as well, because I'm somewhere in the middle. And I never felt sort of lost, but at the same time, I was learning things. That's a compliment, by the way.
Yeah, and I hear it, and thank you. I'm kind of always a bit surprised about the interest in the minutiae of filming. That it seems to me a lot of people don't quite understand the process, which can be absolutely wonderful and also completely mundane at times. So it's kind of fun putting some of those thoughts into it. It is meant to be for the casual people who are interested in Star Wars, interested in the world of acting and movies, whatever. It's not specifically about Star Wars because it sort of ranges sideways, but always the connection is there of me being C-3PO.
How difficult was it to write it? Which makes me sound like I'm suggesting that you struggle with words, but I mean, we're talking like 40-odd years here of the 3PO story, your story with 3PO. It's a lot to cram into one book and to remember.
Quite a few of the stories have been in my mind for on and off for quite a while because maybe I've told them at conventions or meeting people who are interested. And so some of them are really quite current. Some of them were so seminal at the time that they can never leave me. Even now I'm remembering things that I've forgotten to put in the book, but that's all right. We started with 40,000 words, which then got increased to 70,000, and I think now it's about 95,000 words, and I had to stop. I wrote it in pieces as things occurred, so I had various chapters, if you like, running live at the same time. And then the issue was, well, how to knit them into a coherent story. Because it is a kind of story in the end. It's a kind of journey, which I didn't realize. Started off in a very strange way, meeting George, going through some difficult times, going through some good times, some more difficult times. And then gradually I realized I was coming upwards into the light and so on. Not in a scary way, but it makes it kind of rounded. And I didn't expect that. So I was quite interested in that. I surprised myself in a small way.
We'll come on to all of those times throughout the interview. I hope you brought an overnight bag. You know, we're in this
I'm beginning to get scared.
You're regretting your decision to come and see me again. Well, the doors are locked. J.J. Abrams has written the foreword, and I don't want to spoil it too much just in case somebody exclusively wants to pick up the book for the foreword.
Behave yourself.
There are people out there who could behave in such a way. Honestly, Anthony, I'm one of them. But he describes 3PO and R2-D2 as the glue that keeps Star Wars together. And when you think about it, he's so right, isn't he?
Well, George Lucas originally wrote those characters as a common thread, and maybe glue is a modern interpretation of that. But like they are the breadcrumbs that you think, as a viewer, that I'm on the right path here. I'm not getting lost. However many side stories, tangential moments there are. Always when you see 3PO or R2, you think, oh yeah, Star Wars, I remember. JJ, of course, JJ came up to me on the set one day on episode 9 and said, you should write a book. And I kind of looked at him, he said, are you? And I didn't say anything, but a few days later I said, would you write the foreword? It'd be an honor. And he wrote a foreword that just made me laugh from the moment I read the first line.
And again, when you sort of look into it, and maybe a more casual fan does have to look into it to sort of realize why that sentence makes sense, because 3PO and R2-D2 are the only two characters that have appeared in all 9 saga films that it will be, and you've been in the suit for all of them.
43 years. Who knew?
Who knew?
Back in the day, it was one.
In 1976.
Star Wars, it was called.
Yeah, it wasn't A New Hope then, was it? But looking back, I want to go back before we return to the present day. Just a couple of years or so ago, and you were 24 when you went to drama school. Is that correct?
Yes.
This is where I'm going to demonstrate that I have actually read the book. Okay, so keep congratulating me as I go along. And then you graduated with a job at the BBC radio drama company.
Yes.
And then you moved on to theatre and TV work.
Yes.
Before the phone rang about some weird little sci-fi film in 1975. And you make a decision that probably went from being just another job to changing your life forever. And I am talking about Star Wars here. But you actually didn't particularly want to meet George Lucas, did you?
No, I was very lucky. I was working in theatre in the West End, and with actors, it always changes with a phone call. It's like it has to be the device that changes your life. I didn't want to even discuss a sci-fi movie because I wasn't interested in sci-fi. You know, famously, I left the theatre watching 2001: A Space Odyssey because it was boring. Anyway, my agent made me go. And George really surprised me because he was the opposite of what I thought a Hollywood film producer, director would be. George has never been Hollywood, but I didn't understand that at the time. You know, he's an independent filmmaker from San Francisco who doesn't particularly get the Hollywood system. And I was utterly surprised at this small, shy, quiet man who was very sincere but slightly unenergized. But then I found out that he was seeing hundreds of people for every role in the film, and he was interviewing people's tough. You know, if you interviewing, I mean, I'm sorry, you're interviewing me. I know how it feels. It's tough.
I know.
Stick with it.
It depends on the guest, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Tough. And he talked very quietly about his film. And I've told this story many times, and of course I say it in writing now. Literally, the seminal moment was seeing what I learnt was called a concept painting, how a thing might look in a film if that film was ever made, a concept painting. They were all done by an artist called Ralph McQuarrie. He had a main career as being a designer with Boeing aircraft. He was used to drawing machines and so on. He had drawn a picture of this metal man that spoke so humanly to me, so directly coming out of the frame. The eyes of the character just looking into mine with a deep sort of a connection happened. I don't know why. It was magic. I did say to Ralph McQuarrie many years later, yeah, this is all your fault. And he laughed because he'd seen the film, he knew. And then they gave me a script which I could not understand. If you've never, first time you read a film script, it's utterly confusing. It's not like seeing a film because somebody's knitted it all together for you at that point, the editor. So reading this stuff about, a scene here, a scene there, a scene back then, a point of view here, and so on. Lots of stage directions and crazy lines. But I liked the character, the way George and his team had written him. And I went back the next day and eventually said, may I play the part?
And he said,
sure,
straight away. And did you pitch that voice to him, the voice, or did you have to
No,
pitch
not at all.
No.
One of the interesting things in 2001: A Space Odyssey, I said, I just remember Hal, H-A-L, the red light bulb that was so threatening. It was, as I mentioned in the book, and you haven't mentioned my book for several minutes now, so I'm going to mention it.
I've got 2 more pages of questions.
Yeah. Hal is an early example of the dangers possibly inherent in artificial intelligence, because if people haven't seen that film, please just find it somewhere because it's terrifying. But there you had Douglas Rain's voice, I think, you're hurting me, Dave. This tremendously low-level, threatening, calm voice of a computer going completely nuts. That stayed with me. The rest of the film didn't. I saw it years later. I was too young to enjoy it the first time. Anyway, I read the script, liked the part. The next day, I'm at Elstree Studios up the road from here with no clothes on.
I can confirm that Anthony has got his clothes on today.
For you.
Thank you very much. The film is a big success, which, I mean, I think this surprised everyone, it's fair to say. I mean, the one constant you hear from anyone who worked on the film in any kind of capacity was that nobody had a clue what it would become.
Yeah, during filming, particularly Mark and I would kind of wince at each other's lines. But you can't see my gritted teeth because I'm wearing a mask. But, Mark's honest delivery of this farm boy wanting a better life is one of the entrancing things in the film. One of the reasons 3PO did work quite well in the film as a viable character is that people like Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill, talk to him as though he were a real entity. And so the audience go along with that,
Yeah, there's a human element to C-3PO. I mean, of course, he looks
more than a human element. I mean, he's bipedal and sort of a human frame. But one of the curious things that kind of grew was that the human part of him is kind of more human than if he were human, because you don't expect a machine to show human attributes. I always think it's the same as people looking at a dog and say, he understands everything. Look at him, he understands. People want to see, they anthropomorphize everything if possible.
So it comes out in 1977 and it does all right, the movie, which we now know as A New Hope. And something that surprised me in the book that you've written.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is that you weren't actually, because just to say, we've met before. I've interviewed you a couple of times in the past.
Yes, you told me.
You remember you. Unbelievable. But something that surprised me, because I don't think, I've certainly not, in my research for previous interviews with you that we all remember and love, I don't remember you talking about this, but you were not in the mood particularly to celebrate the success of the film. You actually, to a certain point, resented Star Wars to begin with, despite its success.
I wasn't allowed to be a part of it. They decided, whoever, I don't know, mystery men, I think I know, that it would be better to keep 3PO apparently as a real automaton, that he was an advanced piece of electronics magically created by the studios and the production. And it would be confusing if people knew it was just some guy in bits of plastic and fiberglass and rubber and stuff. Nobody ever mentioned this. It became obvious by default that I was never really mentioned in any degree. And that became really difficult to enjoy the whole thing because I wasn't there.
And you actually felt inferior, I guess, to your co-stars.
I felt completely negated, the fact that Carrie and Mark and Harrison were fated, and of course Sir Alec Guinness. And yet I thought I was part of that team. But I wasn't allowed to be. And that I think anybody would feel a little left out, rejected, redacted, ignored, whatever. You'd have to be a machine not to be hurt by that. That was a rather clever way of putting that.
It was very clever.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That will make the cut. We've got something.
Okay.
We've done well out of 14 minutes. So when did you, because talking to you now and talking to you previously, reading the book, it's obvious the affection you have for this character that you've had for a number of years. But when was the turning point mentally for you when you started to get what your role is and how you're part of it? And also when, I suppose, did Lucasfilm change their mentality in terms of celebrating your role?
Well, there was a seminal moment too when it came that they were going to make another movie.
So this could be The Empire Strikes Back.
It was going to be called The Empire Strikes Back. And, would I do it again? And the original Star Wars opening was kind of difficult because it was everywhere, but I wasn't a part of it. And so when they came to me, they're going to make another thing called a sequel. It's going to be called The Empire Strikes Back. Would I be in it? And I really had to think, did I want to go through the physical side of it again? And also, why would I face being trivialized again? Why would I trivialize myself by doing something in which I was being ignored after the fact? It came down to did I or did I not? And then two things happened in my brain, at least. It was a job, and I'm an actor, freelance actor, you're meant to say yes to jobs. And secondly, I realized that I didn't want to abandon C-3PO, that kind of I was linked with him, bonded with him. He was my friend. How could I let him go? So I said yes. And things were better. We had lovely Irving Kershner directing, crazy, really almost like a Muppet. He was wonderful. He's full of kind of crazy life. They put my name on the poster. That was nice. They acknowledged.
So your name wasn't on the poster for the original film?
Oh, no. I actually had the biggest part in the film. I had more lines than anyone.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's kind of hurtful.
Sorry. As the process went on with The Empire Strikes Back, is that when you began to feel part of it?
By then, of course, Carrie and Mark and Harrison had become these international stars, and I was still slightly the guy in the hot gold suit. But that was okay. I had at this point made a rationalized decision to be a part of it. It was riding on the back of the first one. Nobody cared about the first one. Yes, silly film. Woohoo, not anymore. It's a big success. So suddenly you are now in this mega thing where people were being more careful and possibly more respectful, I think.
You mentioned Alec Guinness there, and he almost had, I suppose, the opposite feeling in a way, because he felt he was being recognised too much for Star Wars, didn't he?
Yes. I have huge respect and loving memories of being with him and him helping me, him being supportive and so on. He was magnificent on the set because he was one of the old school, slightly confused by the way this film was being produced, as were most people in England. He, as time went on, and I talk about it in the book, thank you, that he had done such a raft of wonderful, wonderful characters. I mean, you switch TV on any time and you'll find some of his old movies. And how delightful eventually to be in Wadi Rum filming episode 9, of Star Wars, to have the significance of that from Lawrence of Arabia, in which he was such a wonderfully adept artist, another great performance. He gradually, as time went on, it became clear that he resented being known for an old man in a dressing gown, because he'd done so many other more intricate things, and he didn't live long enough to come through that kind of dip, shall we say. I did.
You did, and I think the Alec Guinness Star Wars beef, if you like, has it possibly been misinterpreted? Because we're talking here that he's getting too much recognition for this role rather than the work he'd done previously. But that seems to have also been translated into he hated Star Wars, didn't like the films. Is that true?
I don't believe that's true. How could you hate them? There were different genres possibly from the ones he'd ever been in before. But he had accepted the script from a man for whom he had great respect. He liked and admired and respected George very much. The fact that George's creative style slightly was a little confusing possibly on set at that time may have concerned him a bit, but he had nothing but liking and respect for George. He was a wonderfully kind man, but he was absolutely no fool. He could observe the truth and so on. And I think, I once said to an actor at a party, and I won't say who it was, but or is, but I went up. I said, to the host, is that so-and-so? And they said, yeah. So I went over and said, hi, I'm Anthony Daniels, and I love what you do in that series. He said, I do other things, I think it was like the rudest reply. But the thing with me, of course, is I don't do other things. I just do 3PO, so that's totally cool. But Alec had, if you see a film called Tunes of Glory, he is this disgusting, Scottish, ugly sergeant major, bully, crazy person. Gosh, amazing transformation from the Lady Killers or even from dear Obi-Wan Kenobi.
In one word, how would you describe wearing the outfit?
In one word, I can do your phrase, not for fun. Okay. It's very much ambient, reactive, so that in the studio right now, I'd be, I won't say comfortable, but the aircon's pretty good. The issue in 1976 when we filmed was that it was one of the first heat waves that I'd ever experienced in my life. The roads melted. There were standpipes in the street. People didn't have water. And I was in the studio, which may or may not have been air conditioned, but back then we had these huge arc lights that made huge amounts of heat themselves. Now a lot of it's low level
LED
type things. So that was not great, and you could feel the heat. People were amazed because I was exuding heat. You could feel it, radiating it. Then we have other places where I've been on a commercial shoot where they've had to get hairdryers to blow hot air into me because it's never good. It's never good, but I get paid.
Yeah, you go through the agony for your art, for the fans, and for the paycheck.
Yeah, whatever.
But mostly the paycheck. Did it get better over time? I mean, you were still in the outfit as soon as this year, 2019. Has it got better over time?
They did change elements of the costume. The best thing was they enabled the face to come on and off within seconds, which meant that I could breathe and clean up a bit and so on. They also gave me a little capillary vest, which is the sort of thing space people wear out in space. So you have a little very thin vest, and it's got tubes that when you connect it up to a bag that has a circulating motor and iced water, then you get this sort of instant heart attack effect. Really, it's quite alarming. You say, whoa, I think I died. And I think we used it a couple of times because out in the desert, it actually was quite pleasant. So it has got better, and I've got used to putting up with things.
Now, Anthony, when we last met for the aforementioned interview, when I asked you about the chances of there being more Star Wars films, you told me adamantly nil chance. Now, we're talking in a period in time after the original trilogy and after the prequel trilogy. So this is before Disney got involved, before they acquired the franchise. So unless you knew something and was just lying to me, how surprised were you to get the call from, I suppose, J.J. Abrams to begin with?
I was utterly surprised. And actually, it was a call from Kathy Kennedy, who explained that she was the producer of the new Star Wars film. And would it be all right, she was asking my permission, if J.J. Abrams, who was directing her film, if he could give me a call.
You were busy. You were busy.
Yeah, I said, let me think about it. And of course, he did. He actually was so endearing because he just kept telling me how wonderful I was. I let the phone go on for quite a while. And then I said, enough, what do you want? He said, I want you to be in my film. Would you like to just do the voice? And I said, no. And he went, quite right. I said, but I would like a new suit. And so that happened.
So there was a chance that 3PO could have been CGI'd then? No,
CGI is actually really quite expensive. Sometimes it's better to have an actor in a suit. And what many people won't understand, I think, watching the movies, neither should you think about the mechanics when you're watching it, but a lot of creatures are actually done by puppeteers, either in a suit or partly in a suit. But you may have a team. I have been working with a tiny figure that I think from memory had 5 puppeteers around it to create, somebody might be moving an arm, somebody a foot, an eyebrow, whatever. And to see people, often dressed in green so that you can disappear them, to see them working as a unified team, creating something exquisite. It's really like it's performance art in itself. It's like ballet done miniature by fingers. So a lot of the creatures you like and admire are actually being manipulated live with human intelligence, human reaction, human timing, all coming together. And because you've got a skilled team, they can work as a unit and create something absolutely marvelous over there with rods and pulleys.
And were you not tempted to go down that route to try it out, or you were a man of an old school nature?
I do. I absolutely have a good way of putting it. One of the things I like in the movies is when something is done in a practical way that is not CGI. Very useful computers, but sometimes you get more of an emotional content from having a manipulator, a puppet master there. And there were elements certainly in episode 5 where I was puppeteering 3PO because it was impossible to wear the costume. So I had my arm almost like a ventriloquist act. And if you do a trick various ways in a film, people can't work it out. Like Superman flies using all sorts of techniques. The camera can whiz round you, which make you spiral, as it were. And the human brain wants to believe, so it computes just the reality of it all. So I did do a bit of puppetry. There's always, interesting. It's always fun to do things in a different way, and I think in this next film, I do some odd stuff as well.
Okay, there's another film, is there?
There is.
Might come on to that, whether you like it or not. So you do touch on this in the book, and I think it's something that's quite important to sort of discuss and hopefully one day solve. I'm not suggesting that we can do that, sat in this room right now, Brexit. But something that wasn't around during the originals, was there for the prequels a little bit, but in no way to where it is now, is social media, which gives you more of an insight to the fans. And I suppose the fans, because you've had great experiences with fans, I mean here the fans that you don't meet at conventions. Anyone has access to Twitter or to Facebook or the rest of it. And I'm saying this as a fan. From an online point of view, the Star Wars fandom is in a pretty bad, toxic place right now. Have you noticed any of that? You're on Twitter. Would you agree with that statement?
I am on Twitter. I am now on Instagram. Instagram. It's all very new. Social media, yes, that has grown exponentially. It's for good and not so good. When I arrived at the set for Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, I was slightly concerned that there might be an atmosphere of shame, negativity, worry. Are we doing the right thing? Because I had been looking at things on YouTube, which I recently discovered, like social media.
Just YouTube in general here, not Star Wars blogger.
No, YouTube. I didn't realize. I don't go out much.
This was in 2019 you discovered YouTube?
Maybe a year before.
Okay, 2018. It's not much better.
It's pretty amazing. There's lots of good stuff. But there's also lots of, I think, called bloggers or whatever. They do programs.
Vloggers.
What?
Vloggers. Video bloggers. Vloggers,
I
baby.
See. Vlogger. It sounds Russian.
Yeah.
I'm a vlogger.
Yeah, but it's open to the world.
Yeah, and that's a great thing. But you do slightly wonder about the qualifications of some of these people who vlog, as you teach me to say, or people who opine on Twitter or whatever. It's well known, TripAdvisor, can you trust the source material here? And I had been watching people who rant on about how appalling the previous two Star Wars films, The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, how this was a tragedy, it was against the laws of nature, people should die, people should be sacked, people should be removed from the earth, because they had created this film with a story that the vlogger did not like. Me, most of it, I have no idea about the intricacies of the story. I just play a droid, But the determination, the energy that people put into the negativity was such that I thought, when I arrived on set, it'll be disaster. Absolutely the contrary. We just got on and made something wonderful right from the start. No, there are people, who debate on air, and that's fine. But I was taking them too literally, and I'm thinking, well, no, Kathy Kennedy can't be sacked, because I was just talking to her the other day on the phone. They come up with stuff. And if you repeat things often enough, it becomes alternative facts.
And for anyone who's not as in the know as I am, and then even more so we're talking, as you mentioned, The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, the first two saga films in the Disney era. Certainly Episode 8, The Last Jedi, did seem to split the fan base down the middle, sort of like the Marmite Star Wars film, if you like. Some people just didn't like the film, and that's okay. If you don't like something, it's not okay to be nasty with your dislike. Some people didn't like the films for very specific reasons. They didn't like the fact there was a female lead. They didn't like the fact that John Boyega was a black stormtrooper. Some quite shocking, specific reasons. Some people just didn't like it. Some of your colleagues have sort of been quite personally hit by this. I know Ahmed Best, with the backlash he got from the prequels. I mean, he's talked openly recently. He almost, committed suicide over some of the backlash he received, which is obviously, just terrible. The way, these what might feel like meaningless tweets can affect people. And then I think Kelly Marie Tran is quit social media. Daisy Ridley maybe too.
You're telling me some of, I wasn't aware of some of these things. Of course you have female heroes because it should have always been like that. For whatever reason it wasn't. It's nonsense. Daisy is phenomenally powerful as a hero. Not only on film, but actually on the set. There's a sequence, which out in the trailer actually, so I can talk about it, where she battled the elements in November. I will tell you, it was at Pinewood. It's terrifyingly cold 6 days of her life. And she just got on with it because she's ballsy, gutsy, whatever. Beautiful eyes, face, acting, everything about her is good. And she's a nice person too. She would regularly save me from falling over on set.
In outfit, we should add.
Yeah, in the outfit, yes. With Kelly Marie Tran, I never actually read any of the stuff, but I know, because I've talked to her, how hurt she was. Nasty people sit at home. I don't know where this viciousness comes from. The school bully writ electronically, larger and larger. The on-air knifing of people. Why have people become so nasty? It's a curious thing that has grown. Maybe it was always there, the village gossip, but we know now it's given the wrong people freedom to write nasty stuff. Why does it feel so good that they can be nasty and not stand there and say, admit who they are, or be ready to be answered back to? A lot of the stuff you talked about, I wasn't aware of. I liked the film. Just get on with it, that anybody can be a hero. Now, even maybe 3PO gets to be a hero. I don't know. And he's a droid, for heaven's sake. He's neither male nor female, nor he's just Metal Man.
Justice for droids. He can be a hero.
JFD.
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 It starts now.
Well, people, yes, coming to a theatre near you. JF.
Coming to a hashtag near you.
Oh, don't start me about it.
Okay.
I have no idea what that means. 3PO, one of the things that these tweeters do is bully people. And I have no time for that. 3PO, as people have pointed out, has been bullied for 43 years. And it's not a good feeling. It's time it stopped.
Hashtag JFD. I feel like maybe, because now you have the fans that like the film, and that's fine. The fans that didn't like the film, and that's fine not to like a film. But they're now attacking each other. It's almost like Brexit. Both sides are just attacking each other online. Has Star Wars perhaps got to the stage where it now has, because it's been around for so long, so many different generations of fans, that it's now impossible for them to make a film that will please everybody?
You make a very good point. And the truism is you can't please. If you have made something that pleases everyone, then maybe it lacks an edge, And I do enjoy the fact that from the beginning, when it first met the public, Star Wars has encouraged debate. Some people like the dark side, etc. Some people, the light, or whatever we call it. There's always been something, healthy debate. It's the fact that the debate has slightly turned slightly toxic, and it didn't need to do that, So you enjoy whatever aspect of the film. And I wasn't so sure about it, but I'm not going to get nasty about it. It is a film. The story evokes all sorts of emotional qualities within people, but, restraint in everything. There are bits I don't like, normally the bits I'm not in, but, I'll let people enjoy those. The great thing about it being on media is that you can fast forward through the bits you're not in. I like that.
Yeah, and we should say, or I would like to say, and you'll vouch for this, the majority of Star Wars fans are great.
I hadn't my book, which you haven't mentioned for a while, starts by mentioning the fans. And I didn't realize how many times I think I mentioned the fans all the way through. It wasn't intentional. I mean, I wrote it, but I didn't realize how often I was referencing fan reactions and so on. And it was a fan reaction en masse many times that finally, only 10 years ago or less, 8 years, 9 years, made me understand that I had been missing out by being a part of it, by being in Star Wars. I'd missed out on Star Wars because the experience of filming is very different from seeing it on screen. And it wasn't until, particularly to do with the concert series, that I encountered thousands of people over 3 years, thousands of people watching me on stage, albeit with a symphony orchestra, conductor, 100-piece choir, effects, huge screen. Nevertheless, I felt the pinpoint of their attention. Felt very good. And what I got was the love and affection and interest and intelligent reaction to what, starting with George and going through everybody else, to the actors, to what we saw on screen, to John Williams' beloved music, what they genuinely enjoyed.
And what was it like working on a Star Wars film, The Rise of Skywalker, without Carrie Fisher for the first time?
Carrie's how would you say, aura, Carrie's memory is there. And I don't want to, I sometimes get a bit nervous about people sanctifying somebody, you know. Carrie was lovely. Her presence on the set was, as we know, JJ is managing to use footage miraculously that he's borrowing from himself. I think there must be a word for that. But I think it was easy to remember her because, of course, I'd been in the other films with episodes 7 and 8. And on 7 particularly, it was strange because I was one of the few faces that she recognized, and 3POs. And I think that, I like to think I gave her a kind of comfort because she was sometimes a little nervous on set. You know, she found, as I do, learning the lines difficult. They're strange lines. People wanted her presence on the set of 9. You know, it felt right that our particular group, within the, as you read in the script, were all one as before. And I think people were. I've seen odd bits of footage that really do work, and it's not in I have to admit, you see, I didn't like. She turned around in the second,
in Rogue One, the CGI
Rogue One
version. Yeah,
I think that was a bit of an error of judgment because you could have recognized her from the back.
Yeah,
you know, the buns, the
iconic buns,
the iconic buns. So you know, I don't like everything that I see, but I think people will be quite happy in a melancholy sort of way to see her in this film.
So therefore, were you quite relieved they made the decision to find old footage of her rather than completely recreate her
the
with
CG
computers
thing,
and what have you?
Because we all know her so well. I think the CG would have been a bit creepy, actually.
We'll save it for the book, but I think because the story of how you influenced this through a certain level of nagging, I guess. But I think it's quite clear in the clips we've seen of The Rise of Skywalker already that 3PO seems to have more of his old role back. He seems to be with the gang, more involved in the action, whether he wants to be, probably not. And I believe, from what I've read anyway, that you might have influenced that somewhat, or at least prodded, nudged in the right direction.
Are you speaking about an email?
Yeah, you basically harassed J.J. Abrams electronically, didn't you?
Yeah. I bullied him.
And you printed the email in the book.
Verbatim.
It's there.
And his reply.
And the reply was short.
His four-word reply.
It was short, but it paid off.
It paid off. I think he was already heading in that direction, to be honest.
But you've referenced 3PO, his role in, I think you even applied this to the prequels as well, but certainly the last 2 films in the saga. I can't remember exactly how you describe it, but it was wonderful. I think it was almost like a decoration brought out at Christmas, purely there for nostalgia. Yeah. And you're cool with that, but you wanted more.
Yeah, I think 3PO became, through whatever means, George's original concept, the original script writing, my superlative acting. He became a figure in his own right, with his own abilities, his own, energy. And to sideline him, as did happen certainly in 7 and 8, seemed to me an awful waste. It was like having a wonderful sports car and only using it to go to Marks and Spencer's. It didn't kind of work. However, that has to be set against the background in Seven of JJ bringing all the pieces alive again, because the story is not about 3PO. He's one of the elements, and there were lots of other exciting things to bring in and new characters and so on. And the same with Episode 8. We went a particular direction that had 3PO tagging along. A piece of furniture. It's almost like carrying a deck chair around. You recognize the stripes, and it was useful for sitting on, but no function. And I get paid whatever number of lines I say, whatever bits I do, I get paid, the same. So it's not like I'm begging for work, as it were. I just think as a person, he deserved more. Nobody knows it's me, so it's okay. It's about him. And in this film, I think he gets it. Of course, JJ is still cutting it, and if I annoy him, he may cut me out.
No, you're in like all the clips we've seen so far, which could be all of your scenes, which probably equals 30 seconds that we've seen so far. But don't think like that. You're the star. And you'll be on the poster as well. You will.
I don't know.
I'll email JJ. It works.
No, I'll email JJ.
Okay. You actually ended up having, because you can't talk about storylines in terms of within the film, but you can talk a little bit about storylines off the film. You had like dinner or something with the King and Queen of Jordan, no less. Is that true? Filming the Rise of Skywalker?
Well, we lived next door, you see. We were in this very posh hotel in Jordan. And, we weren't doing anything. He was at a loose end. So he invited, to everyone's amazement, King Abdullah II invited 14 of us round to dinner. And it was knockout, and I said to the producer, I haven't got clothes for this, out in the desert. And they said, no, don't worry. So we got there. Queen Rania was in a nice frock, and himself, His Majesty, was in jeans and a sweater, almost like mine. I think he goes to Marks and Spencer's as well. And we had the most informal, lovely, generous, exquisite dinner, the cast and the producers sitting around. And he loved the fact that we were there, because Jordan has wonderful deserts and mountains and things that are often now used as film locations, particularly if you want to go to Mars. It's actually easy to go to Jordan because, not so much jet lag. And it was magical to be with somebody who was ruling a country and who was so down to earth and real. It was a huge treat. We were all like, but it was so relaxed that just had a good time.
So the King and Queen of Jordan are Star Wars fans?
Totally, and I don't think the king himself is in it, but quite a number of the Jordanian army are artists within the film.
Really?
And certainly the infrastructure that put our production in the middle of the sand was extraordinary. Everything had to be steamrolled every day to get us out there, because the sand just takes over the moment you leave it, It was a huge treat to be there. And he visited the set, he came down in his helicopter and wandered about a bit. But he's such a down-to-earth bloke, wasn't wearing a crown or anything.
Disappointing.
Well, a bit, yeah. I mean, he could have gone to wardrobe and looked like a king. He was in combat fatigues and everything.
Played a role, man.
Yeah.
We're actors. Yeah. Have you sent him a signed copy of your book or a link to Amazon?
Oh, isn't that interesting? Link to Amazon would be good because it's discounted already, which I found a bit rude.
That is rude. That is rude. Other booksellers are available electronically as well, we should add. And
I like real bookshops.
Okay, that's fine. You've only just learned about YouTube. Give it time. Give it time, Anthony. I Am C-3PO by Anthony Daniels is out now in actual ink on paper, other forms of communication still to come as well. Anthony, thank you for having this natter with me.
It's been exhausting.
I agree.
You're going to edit all this?
Yeah.
Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Jamie Stangroom told me to do this. He's a ridiculous human being, which I've discovered in a matter of a few minutes.